I doubt she can even read the menu. The words, sharp as shattered glass, sliced through the hushed restaurant. Conrad Beaumont, bloated with arrogance, aimed them at Naomi, his waitress. The air in Lael, thick with truffle oil and old money, crackled. He thinks he's won, thinks he's stripped her bare. What he doesn't see, what none of them see, is the fire in her eyes. A scholar caged, yes, but still burning. A mind brimming with centuries of history. He's about to learn that money can't buy everything, especially not quiet dignity. He's about to learn the hard way. They have no idea how her quiet kindness will change everything. Not a clue. I doubt she can even read the menu. The words, sharp as shattered glass, sliced through the hushed restaurant. Conrad Beaumont, bloated with arrogance, aimed them at Naomi, his waitress. The air in Liel, thick with truffle oil and old money, crackled. He thinks he's won, thinks he's stripped her bare. What he doesn't see, what none of them see, is the fire in her eyes. A scholar caged, yes, but still burning. A mind brimming with centuries of history. He's about to learn that money can't buy everything, especially not quiet dignity. He's about to learn the hard way. They have no idea how her quiet kindness will change everything. Not a clue. Leal existed as a carefully constructed illusion. More than just a restaurant, it was a sanctuary from the city's relentless pulse. A place where the air itself seemed infused with the hushed reverence of old wealth. Chandeliers wept Austrian crystal, casting a forgiving glow on faces lifted and tightened by the city's most skilled hands. The silverware whispered against bone china, a delicate percussion accompanying the hushed pronouncements of power brokers and socialites. Here on the Upper East Side, dining was theater, and the players knew their parts. Naomi Parker, all angles and exhaustion, moved through this stage as unobtrusively as possible. At 27, she wore the severe black uniform of Liel like a shroud, the custom tailoring doing little to disguise the weariness etched onto her face. She was a ghost in this gilded hall, a pair of hands, a polite smile, a vessel for desires both spoken and unspoken. Few saw beyond the uniform, beyond the practiced deference. They couldn't see the ghost of the scholar she once was, the woman who had breathed life into dusty archives, translating 17th century French poetry and debating the nuances of Platonic philosophy. They remained blind to the weight of her mother's medical bills, a crushing debt that had forced her to abandon her PhD candidacy for the thankless grind of the service industry. Her mother, once a vibrant history teacher who filled their cramped New Jersey apartment with books and a thirst for knowledge, now lay tethered to machines in a sterile hospital room, fighting a battle Naomi could only fund. So Naomi served. She served the hedge fund managers who nonchalantly discussed firing hundreds over $1,000 bottles of wine. She served the society wives who picked at their calorie-conscious salads and lamented the hardship of redecorating their Hamptons estates. With each placid nod, each murmured, "Of course, sir," a piece of her withered. But tonight the atmosphere was different. It thrummed with a particular brand of crude arrogance emanating from a corner booth. The corner occupied by Conrad Beaumont. Beaumont, a real estate mogul who'd bulldozed his way into the city's upper echelons, had no lineage, no refinement, only the blunt force of money. He was a skyscraper in a sea of townhouses, loud where others were discreet, dripping in ostentation where others favored subtle elegance. The gaudy timepiece strapped to his wrist likely cost more than Naomi's student loan debt, and he brandished it like a weapon. Beside him sat his latest trophy, Brittany, a woman barely older than Naomi, whose face was a frozen testament to the wonders of cosmetic surgery. She remained glued to her phone, her expression a mask of bored indifference. Completing the unholy trinity was Leland Pryor, a junior partner whose spine had seemingly been surgically removed to accommodate Beaumont's every whim. His laughter arrived a beat too early, his nods a degree too enthusiastic. George, a veteran waiter hardened by years of service, had given Naomi a pitying look when assigning her their table. "Good luck," he'd muttered. "Two-bottle Bordeaux and zero-tip kind of guy, and a sadist." From the moment Naomi approached, the performance began. "Wine list?" Beaumont barked, not even glancing at her. The snap of his fingers was a blatant insult. Naomi presented the leather-bound tome with forced calm. "Of course, sir." He scanned the list, his lips moving soundlessly as he butchered the French names. Get me! Get me the Patras, the Zo5! The S hissed into the rarefied air, a verbal desecration. Naomi's training kicked in. Her face remained impassive. An excellent choice, sir. The 2005 Petrus is a remarkable vintage. She pronounced it correctly. Petrus. The S silent, the vowels pure. It was a subtle correction, barely perceptible, but Beaumont's eyes narrowed. He had noticed. A tiny chink in his armor of perceived sophistication, the meal unfolded like a slow-motion train wreck. He complained that his steak, ordered rare, was too bloody. He rejected a side dish, declaring the asparagus limp. Each grievance was delivered with a theatrical sigh, a performance of refined taste that was entirely unconvincing. Leland, ever the sycophant, chimed in with predictable enthusiasm. Conrad, your standards are just higher. Brittany remained lost in her phone, occasionally surfacing to pout for a selfie. Naomi handled each complaint with robotic efficiency. I will have the chef prepare another immediately, sir. My apologies, sir. I will replace it at once. Her calm seemed to only fuel his ire. He was a predator who thrived on the panic of his prey, and she refused to give him the satisfaction. Then came the moment for the main course selection. The air vibrated with tension. This was what Beaumont had been building towards, a moment of blatant dominance. He would put the quiet, efficient waitress in her place. He scanned the menu, his finger halting on one of the most complex and traditionally prepared dishes, one rarely ordered by the restaurant's American clientele. I'll have the, he began, his voice booming across the hushed dining room. He stumbled over the name, a mangled mess of butchered French. The rendezvous al dejeuner. He pronounced it, rognon de veau al déjeuner. Leland chuckled, a wet, unpleasant sound. Only you, Conrad, always picking the most exotic thing. Beaumont leaned back, a smug grin plastered across his face. He locked eyes with Naomi, then gestured dismissively at the menu. His voice, loud enough for nearby tables to turn their heads, dripped with condescending poison, fueled the fire, turning it into a citywide guessing game. For the elite of New York, the details were too specific to ignore. The description of the mogul, the flashy watch, the trophy wife, the sycophantic associate, the palant for bludgeoning his way through situations pointed in one very specific, very public direction. Conrad Beaumont was at his desk in his penthouse office overlooking Central Park when his PR director, a perpetually stressed woman named Cynthia, forwarded him the link with the subject line. Urgent. We need to discuss. Beaumont read it. Then he read it again. A vein throbbed in his temple. The blood drained from his face, leaving a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. It was him. Every humiliating detail was there, wrapped in elegant prose that only made the exposure more gling. The writer had turned his moment of power into a parable of his ownishness. Who wrote this? He roared at Cynthia over the intercom. Find out who talked to them. Was it the manager Dubois? Was it that little waitress? His paranoia spiraled. He was in the middle of negotiating a massive legacy defined deal to build a new cultural center, a deal that required the cooperation of the city's old money philanthropists and cultural gatekeepers, the very people who would read an article like this and see him as the boorish caricature he secretly feared he was. This story didn't just wound his ego, it threatened his empire. It made him look like a buffoon, a man without the subtlety and grace required to helm a project of cultural significance. His phone rang. It was a board member from one of the foundations he was courting. The man's tone was breezy, but the question was pointed. Conrad say, "Did you see that piece in Canvas magazine? The one about the restaurant Wild story. Almost sounds like someone we know." Beaumont felt a cold sweat on his neck. The story wasn't just a story anymore. It was a narrative, and it was sticking to him. The tremors of the silence in that restaurant had become an earthquake, and the ground was cracking right under his feet. He had tried to crush one person's spirit, and in doing so, he had handed a weapon to the entire city to use against him. He slammed his fist on his desk. He had to fix this. He had to find the source. He had to regain control of the narrative. His obsession shifted from punishing Naomi to silencing the story itself. But it was already too late. The story didn't belong to him anymore. It belonged to everyone. For Naomi, the world had shrunk to the four walls of her apartment and the sterile corridors of the hospital. She saw the article because her friend, another former grad student who now worked as a paralegal, sent it to her. The subject line was just a series of exclamation points. Naomi read it with a feeling of dizzying dissociation. It was her life, her humiliation, her moment of defiance, all laid bare for the world to see. Yet she was an anonymous ghost at the center of it. Genevieve Lauren had protected her identity, but in doing so had made her story public property. She read the comments, the praise for the scholar, the condemnation of the mogul. It was vindicating but also terrifying. She was no longer just Naomi Parker, out-of-work waitress. She was a symbol, a hashtag waiting to happen. She felt exposed as if a spotlight had found her, even in the shadows of her forced leave. Her suspension was nearly over when an email landed in her inbox. The sender's name made her breath catch in her throat. Dr. Philip Rowe. Dr. Rowe had been her PhD advisor, her mentor. He was a titan in the world of French historical studies, a man whose opinions she valued more than almost anyone's. She hadn't spoken to him in over a year, not since her shame-filled call to tell him she was withdrawing from the program. Opening the email felt like reopening a wound. Subject, a long shot. But is this you? Dear Naomi, I hope this message finds you well. I am writing on a bit of a strange whim. A rather extraordinary article has been making the rounds in academic circles. I've attached it here. It's titled The Menu. It tells the story of an unnamed waitress, a scholar of French, who found herself in a challenging situation. As I read it, a few details stood out. The description of her linguistic precision, her deep knowledge of Burgundian history and culture. It sounded remarkably familiar. It sounded like the student who wrote that brilliant seminar paper on the socio-economic impact of the salt tax in 17th century Burgundy. It is perhaps a wild guess, but I had to ask, was that you, Naomi? Regardless of your answer, reading this piece made me think of you and the great promise you showed. It reminded me of what a loss it was for the department when you had to leave. Which brings me to my second more important point. An opportunity has arisen. The University of Lyon, in partnership with our own institution, has just announced the inaugural Malines Dubois Fellowship for Franco-American Historical Research. It's a fully funded 2-year research position based in Lyon. The fellow will have complete access to the municipal archives to study the region's cultural and economic history. Naomi, it has your name written all over it. The application deadline is technically last week. However, Malines was a dear friend of mine, and I am on the selection committee. If you are interested, if you are able to even consider it, I can make a call. We would need a formal application and a statement of purpose by the end of the week. I know life may have taken you down a different path, but talent like yours is rare. I truly hope you will consider it. Warmly, Philip. Naomi read the email 3 times, her vision blurring with tears. It was a lifeline. A ghost from her old life reaching out to pull her back from the abyss. Lion research, the very dream she had been forced to bury. For a moment, the fear and anxiety vanished, replaced by a dazzling, terrifying spark of hope. Could she? Could she really go back? The thought was so overwhelming, so beautiful, it felt dangerous. Meanwhile, Conrad Beaumont's world was contracting. The cultural center deal, his magnum opus, was stalling. A key benefactor, an old money matriarch who sat on the board of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, had called him for a chat. She had spoken about the importance of character and public perception for such a prominent project. She never mentioned the article, but the subtext was a sledgehammer. The narrative was poisoning him. His PR director, Cynthia, was in crisis mode. Conrad, we can't kill the story, she said, pacing his office. It's too big now. Trying to suppress it will only confirm it's about you. We have to change the narrative. And how do we do that? He snarled. You have to get ahead of it. You have to be the bigger man, the magnanimous one. She explained, her voice urgent. You find the waitress, you apologize publicly, and then you help her. You offer her a job, a scholarship, something that makes you look like a patron, not a bully. You turn your villain into your protégé. Beaumont recoiled. apologized to her. Are you insane? The idea of humbling himself before the woman who had humiliated him was physically repulsive. It's not about what you feel, Conrad. It's about optics. Cynthia shot back her professional desperation, overriding her fear of him. Right now, you're the mogul, a rich jerk who bullies waitresses. If you do this, you become Conrad Beaumont, the tough but fair titan who recognized brilliance in an unexpected place and rewarded it. It's a redemption story. The media will eat it up. It saves the deal, and it saves your reputation. He hated it. He hated every single thing about it. It felt like a surrender. But as he looked out over the city, over the empire he had built, he knew she was right. His legacy was at stake. The means no longer mattered, only the ends. Fine, he bit out. Find her. Find the girl. Make a meeting. We'll play it your way. The hunt began. It wasn't hard. Beaumont's resources were vast. A few calls from his security chief to industry contacts, a discreet inquiry to a contact inside a restaurant payment processing company, and a cross-reference with employee records from upscale French restaurants on the Upper East Side. Within a day, they had a name, Naomi Parker, Queens, New York, currently on administrative leave from Lille. Just as Naomi was beginning to sketch out a statement of purpose for the fellowship in Lyon, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a message appeared. Miss Parker, my name is Cynthia Lell. I am the Executive Vice President of Communications for Beaumont Enterprises. Mr. Conrad Beaumont has asked to meet with you to discuss a matter of mutual importance. He is prepared to make you a very generous offer. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. Naomi stared at her phone, the blood turning to ice in her veins. He had found her. The man who had tried to break her was now reaching out with a generous offer. It felt less like an olive branch and more like the first touch of a spider's web. She now stood at a crossroads she could never have imagined. In one hand, she held an email that offered her a path back to her authentic self, a path of intellectual pursuit and quiet dignity, paved with difficulty and uncertainty. In the other, she held a voicemail that offered a shortcut, a transactional solution from the very man who had caused her pain, a path paved with his money and his motives. The choice she made would define not just her future, but who she was. The voicemail from Beaumont Enterprises was a serpent coiling in the heart of Naomi's quiet Queens apartment. For 2 days, she let it lie there, a toxic promise she was terrified to touch. The voice of Cynthia Lell, smooth and corporate, replayed in her mind a stark contrast to the warm, hopeful words of Dr. Rowe's email, which she had printed and kept on her nightstand like a holy text. The two messages represented two entirely different futures, two fundamentally different Naomis. One path was a superhighway paved in gold. She could almost feel the weight of Beaumont's money, a heavy blanket that could smother all her anxieties. She pictured her mother's medical debt vanishing with a single wire transfer. She imagined her mother in a private room with a window overlooking a garden, receiving the best care money could buy, without the constant gnawing fear of the next bill. The thought was a siren song, seductive and overwhelmingly powerful. All she had to do was attend a meeting. All she had to do was listen. The other path was a narrow, winding trail up a mountain she had been forced to abandon years ago. It promised not comfort, but challenge, not wealth, but fulfillment. The fellowship in Lyle was a return to her soul's true home, a life of dusty archives, intellectual rigor, and the quiet pursuit of knowledge. It offered no immediate solutions to her financial burdens. It was a promise of a different kind of richness, one that couldn't be spent, but could never be taken away. On the second night, she sat by her mother's hospital bed, holding her frail hand. Her mother, lucid in the evening, quiet, looked at her. "You seem troubled, my love, more than usual." Naomi forced a smile. "Just tired, Mom. Long. Weak." Her mother squeezed her hand, her grip surprisingly firm. "Naomi, I didn't raise you to be just tired. I raised you to be brilliant. Whatever it is, don't you dare sell your brilliance short. It is the one thing in this world that is truly yours." The word struck Naomi with the force of a physical blow. Don't sell your brilliance short. That was exactly what Beaumont wanted to do. He didn't want to hire her brilliance. He wanted to purchase it, package it, and put it on display to burnish his own tarnished name. In that moment, the conflict within her resolved into a single hard point of clarity. She knew she had to go to the meeting, not to consider the offer, but to formally reject it, to face the man who had tried to humiliate her and show him unequivocally that she could not be bought. She owed him nothing, but she owed her mother and herself this final act of self-possession. The next morning she prepared for the meeting, not as a candidate preparing for an interview, but as a sovereign nation preparing for a diplomatic negotiation. She chose her outfit with meticulous care. It was a uniform of a different sort, not the black suit of a waitress designed for invisibility, but a simple charcoal gray dress her mother had helped her pick out for her first academic conference. Over it, she wore her mother's old college blazer, its tweed fabric, a soft, tangible connection to a legacy of intellect and integrity. She looked not like a supplicant, but like a scholar. The journey into Manhattan was a journey between worlds. The rumbling, democratic chaos of the 7 train filled with the tired, hopeful faces of 100 different countries gave way to the cold, imposing canyons of Midtown. Beaumont Tower was a shard of smoked glass and steel, punching a hole in the sky. It wasn't built to be beautiful. It was built to be dominant. The lobby was a cathedral of corporate power. The air was chilled and silent, the floors of polished black marble reflecting the cold, distant light. A security guard with an earpiece watched her with impassive eyes as she approached the concierge. Announcing her name felt like a confession. Cynthia Lell met her by the elevator bank. She was flawlessly put together, her smile a masterpiece of professional warmth that didn't reach her eyes. "Ms. Parker, thank you so much for coming. Mr. Bowman is very much looking forward to speaking with you." The elevator ascended with unnerving speed and silence, a hermetically sealed capsule rising to the heavens of Capitol. Naomi's ears popped. Cynthia made small talk about the weather, her voice a placid surface on a deep and dangerous ocean. Naomi simply nodded, conserving her energy, focusing her mind. The boardroom was even more intimidating than she had imagined. It was a sterile expanse of glass and stone, dominated by the single monstrously long table of polished obsidian. But the true power move was the view. 3 walls were floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a god's-eye panorama of the city. It was a view designed to communicate one thing: I own all of this. "You are a speck." Conrad Beaumont was waiting at the far end of the table, a king on his throne. He stood as she entered, a performance of chivalry that felt rehearsed and hollow. "Miss Parker," he began, his voice a smooth, calibrated baritone that echoed slightly in the vast room. "Naomi, thank you for coming. Please sit." Naomi chose a chair several seats away from him, creating a deliberate buffer of space. She placed her bag on the floor and her hands on the cool, unforgiving surface of the table. She met his gaze and waited her silence, a refusal to be the first to blink. "I'll get straight to the point," he said, leaning forward, the picture of a man who values his time. "What happened at the restaurant was unfortunate, a misunderstanding. I have a gruff way about me. I expect the best, and sometimes my passion comes out sideways." Naomi listened, her expression unreadable. She recognized the classic non-apology instantly, a rhetorical device to absolve the speaker of all responsibility. "It wasn't my fault, it's just my passion." Her internal resolve hardened like tempered steel. "I was, however," he continued, pivoting smoothly, "impressed, deeply impressed. Your command of the language, your depth of knowledge, it was remarkable. It showed me that you are a person of immense and frankly wasted talent." He gestured to Cynthia, who slid a sleek, leather-bound folder across the table. It stopped directly in front of Naomi. For a moment she just looked at it. The temptation was a physical thing, a low hum of electricity. "I believe that talent should be rewarded," Beaumont declared, his voice swelling with magnanimity. "I believe in lifting people up. That's why I've asked you here. I want to offer you a position at Beaumont Enterprises. We've created a new role." Cynthia chimed in, her voice bright. "Director of Cultural Liaison. You would work with our philanthropic wing, advising on our partnerships with museums, orchestras, and of course, the new cultural center. Your knowledge of European history and culture would be invaluable." Against her better judgment, Naomi opened the folder. The first page was a letter of offer. Her eyes scanned past the jargon to the bottom line. The salary was printed in bold. It was a number so large it seemed fictional, more money than her mother had made in the last 5 years combined. A wave of dizziness washed over her. That number could solve everything. It could erase the past, secure the present, and cushion the future. It was a weapon designed to disarm her will. Beaumont saw her pause. He smiled, sensing victory. The salary would be, let's say, a significant improvement on your current situation. 6 figures, full benefits, a corporate apartment in one of my buildings. We would take care of everything. He leaned back, spreading his hands. All your troubles gone. Naomi closed the folder with a soft, final click. She pushed it gently back to the center of the table. She lifted her eyes, and the doubt that had flickered within them was gone, replaced by a calm, unwavering light. Mr. Beaumont, she said, her voice even and clear, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me, and I thank you for this document. Her formality was a shield, a wall he could not breach. But I must decline your offer. The air in the room shifted. Beaumont's smile twitched a barely perceptible crack in the facade. Cynthia froze, her professional poise faltering. This was not in the script. I think you misunderstand, Beaumont said, his tone losing its warmth, gaining a hard, patronizing edge. This is a life-changing opportunity. Oh, I understand it perfectly, Naomi replied, a newfound strength flowing into her. You have a public relations crisis born from a viral story in which you are the villain. You need to change the narrative. So you create a position for the story's heroine. You offer me a generous salary to become a symbol in your redemption story. You would parade me out at galas and board meetings, the brilliant waitress you and your great wisdom discovered and elevated. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze sharp and analytical. This isn't a job offer, Mr. Beaumont. It's a transaction, the most sophisticated form of hush money I've ever encountered. You want to purchase my silence and my compliance, and you've put a very high price on it. But my integrity was not listed on the menu that night, and it is not for sale now. Beaumont's face, stripped of its benevolent mask, was now a thundercloud of rage. The pretense was over. That's a very cynical way to look at a generous offer, young lady, he snarled. A person in your position can't afford to be so proud. The words meant to wound had the opposite effect. They ignited the last of her fear into pure focused strength. A person in my position? Naomi countered, her voice ringing with conviction. Can't afford not to be. My mother is sick. I have debts that keep me awake at night. Believe me, the money in that folder is not an abstract concept to me. It would be the easy path, but it would cost me the one thing I have left that is entirely my own. She rose from her chair, her movement fluid and certain. Standing, she was no longer a small figure at a vast table. She was his equal. You and I value different things, Mr. Beaumont. You value acquisitions, optics, control. You thought you could diminish me by mocking my job. And now you think you can possess me with a new one? But my work as a waitress does not define my worth, and your money cannot define my future? She took a step back from the table, a final physical declaration of her freedom. I came here today to tell you that I don't need your help. The talent you were so impressed by has already opened a door for me, a real one. An email from my old professor arrived 2 days ago. It seems my story, the anonymous version, reached him. He has nominated me for the inaugural Madeleine Dubois Research Fellowship. I've accepted. I'll be moving to Lyon, France to complete the academic work I was forced to abandon. She let the words settle in the silent, cavernous room. She saw the flicker of disbelief and fury in his eyes. She hadn't just rejected his offer. She had revealed it to be wholly unnecessary. She had a better one. So thank you for the offer, Mr. Beaumont, but I don't want to be your director of cultural liaison. I'd rather be myself. Without another word, she turned her back on him and walked towards the door. She didn't run. She didn't look back. She could feel his enraged stare on her. The silent, sputtering fury of a man who had been outmaneuvered. A man used to buying anything he wanted, who had just discovered something priceless. As the heavy glass door whispered shut behind her, sealing Conrad Beaumont in his sterile, opulent prison, Naomi Parker stepped into the elevator. Descending from that cold peak of power, she felt not smaller, but larger. And when she walked out of the tower's imposing entrance and into the brilliant, chaotic afternoon sun of New York City, she took a deep breath. The air no longer felt thin. It tasted of exhaust fumes, hot pretzels, and boundless, beautiful possibility. She was still in debt. Her mother was still sick, but she was free. Naomi's story isn't just about a clever comeback in a fancy restaurant. It's a powerful reminder that our circumstances don't define our worth. True wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or skyscrapers, but in knowledge, resilience, and the courage to stand by your own integrity. Naomi walked away from a six-figure salary, not because she was foolish, but because she was wise enough to know the difference between a price tag and true value. She chose the difficult path of her own dreams over the easy comfort of a golden cage. Her story forces us to ask ourselves, what is our own dignity worth? If Naomi's journey from quiet desperation to triumphant self-possession moved you, please give this video a like to help her story reach more people. Share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own inner strength. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more true stories that uncover the extraordinary strength hidden in everyday life. Click that notification bell so you never miss a chapter. Thank you for listening.